Saga from Georgia. Chapter 6. Revelation and Punishment. Finally returning to the castle, the young man was led directly to the king. And when the king saw that once again his faithful treasurer was back safe and sound to the castle, bringing with him the requested object, his happiness had no limits. But great was the queen's anger when she heard that the young man, instead of having had the end she expected, was once again back to the palace. And it was precisely in this state of uncontrollable hatred that she entered the royal hall, where the young man waited for her with the water of life goblet in his hands. The king then pointed to the goblet and said to her, "See there, dear, the water you requested." But, suffocated by anger, she could not even utter a word, and withdrew noisily from the hall. Then, the fearless young man, turning to the king, said, "My grandiose king, I already did my duty and performed all the difficult tasks entrusted to me. Now, it is time for me to leave you. But, before starting my trip back, I want to reveal to my sovereign something I no longer can hide. First of all, I must clarify to you that, when I got here and assumed the role of royal treasurer, I was a woman. However, I had barely started my activities in the castle, the queen had already fallen in love with me, thinking I was a boy. I struggled to stay out and avoid her, but, for revenge, she went on to seek all means within her reach to annihilate me. With the claim that you should help her to find a cure for her sterility, she persuaded you to send me to the most difficult and dangerous missions. She made you send me, first, to the ends of the world, in search of the heart and blood of the terrible wild pig, and later, to the petrified kingdom, in demand of the water of life goblet. And she did all that not because she really wanted to get rid of the aforementioned sterility, but because she desired my destruction. But, despite her attempts to lead me to annihilation, her wishes could not be fulfilled. For, in this last mission of mine, instead of losing my life, I've reached my happiness. Because, in the petrified kingdom, thanks to a kind of miracle, I was led to turn from woman to man. And now, thanks to this transformation, I can go back and fulfill the promise that I made to the princess daughter of the Dragon King, which if that should come to happen as she herself had predicted, I would go back and take her for my wife. So my dear king, before I start my trip, give me your blessing." Saying this, the young man bowed to the king, and saying goodbye, left the hall. Then the king, aware now of such sad truth, decided to subject the queen to the most terrible punishment. He asked the servants to go to the stable, bring the naughtiest of his horses, tie the wicked queen to its tail, and drag her through all the city's streets, until there was nothing left of her. So the young man, upon learning of the decision made by the king, immediately came to him asking that, despite the seriousness of what had happened, he should have mercy, and spare the queen's life. But the king answered that he had already made his decision, and that the sentence should be fulfilled in all its rigor, in order to make the entire population become aware of his justice. After the execution, the king requested to bring the young man before him again and said, "My dear friend, I haven't rewarded you yet for those heroic adventures. So, accept, from the hands of a king who esteems you so much, my whole kingdom." But, the honorable young man didn't want to accept, from the king's hands, that grandiose gift. For, at that moment, What he wanted most was to immediately go in search of the beautiful princess, whose father, the Dragon King, he had killed in an unequal fight when he was still a girl. Allow me then, at least, to consider you as a legitimate son, and so, provides you with all that, while taking a trip like this, a royal blood prince need, said the king. About that, there was no refusal. And then, the next day, to accompany the adopted son to the encounter with the bride, a large cortege was summoned, and in this meeting the princess herself was accompanied by a great escort, formed by the most eminent knights of her kingdom. Arriving at the princess's palace, she came to meet him saying cheerfully, "I knew you would keep your promise and come back to me." The wedding was celebrated with pomp and splendor, and lasted several days, at the end of which the happy newlyweds traveled to the castle of the adoptive father, where they were received with a grand banquet. The end.